Hello, everyone. Welcome to a rather bizarre special episode of the main event. You're here with me, Daniel.
And Aaron.
And we've got Nathan and Cameron back with us tonight. Hello, lads.
You all right?
You all right?
So, well, it's been an emotional 48 hours. The world has gone absolutely insane. I've never quite seen anything like this in my life with regards to sport, which is both brilliant and also, in the words of Patrick Bamford, a little sad that there are such serious things going on that don't get anywhere near the coverage.
Mm-hmm.
However, we are a Champions League podcast in terms of our fantasy leagues. This is right up our alley. This was the thing that was threatening to take away what we all love so much that we decided to devote our time and, for me and Aaron, some of our money to doing every week, a couple of times a week. So it's really important that we sort of had our say. That being said, we are recording for everyone's benefit here at 3 minutes past 8 on Tuesday, the 20th of April. So there has been loads of breaking news. We were intending to come on here and have a little bit more news come out. So we're going to speak about more things and have a more accurate reaction. But literally signing on, everything's fallen apart. So what we had for the agenda, we had a full agenda written out, is getting changed on the fly because it looks like this thing's just crumbling from within. With that being said, Aaron, do you want to take us away?
Yeah, so we're going to try and go through kind of the timeline of events, and just so that you all know, the listeners, how we all reacted and what our thoughts were for each part of all the news breaking. Like what Dan said, it's been a crazy few days, and so what we're going to do first is go through when the reaction to the actual announcement. I can't remember. It was in the middle of a game, I believe, one of the Premier League games, just saying that this is official, that 12 teams have signed on to do the European Super League, a league which would take place in the middle of the week and, just take its place instead of the Champions League. The day before, UEFA were meant to vote on the new format of the Champions League. So let's go through everyone's reactions first of all. What were your thoughts when you first got the announcement? Was it shock? Was it sadness, anger?
I think for me it was a mixture because you kind of saw what was happening. It was inevitable it was going to get announced, especially after the whole big picture thing kind of crumbled. They were like, well, we'll just go make our own league. So you kind of say something was coming. But the way it was announced, like you said, with the timing of UEFA about announce everything, I think it was just the wrong time to announce it, and it was done in the wrong way. They waited until like late at night to make a statement on it, and I think it just overall it was just anger at how much greed was involved.
Well, I think a lot of people saw it coming in terms of like over the last, I would say, 10 years. The idea has always been floated around. But again, agreeing with Nathan, the way they did it, in the way they used the pandemic in the statement is like, oh, it saves football, is the wrong way of going about it. So I think in terms of the way they announced it was bad, but I think everyone saw it coming for a while now.
Dan, do you agree?
Yeah, so obviously when I saw it, I was just like, oh, this is happening again. And what made me mad at the time specifically was UEFA have been bending over backwards for years for these big clubs. They earn a disproportionate amount of money regardless because of all the UEFA coefficients within the Champions League. So these clubs have been having their cake and eating it anyway. And UEFA are just like that lad that's girlfriend cheats on him every other weekend and he just takes her back, or vice versa. And as fans, we can all see through it. We're all getting sick of it. There's a lot of politics involved. But I just felt so angry that they'd done this in the background, they'd colluded, and they've changed the structure of the Champions League for these teams, which everyone hates. And then they went, oh, well, we're going to leave anyway. And it leaves a really bitter taste in the mouth, that alone. It doesn't surprise me in the slightest that these billionaires want to do this. So at no stage of grief was I in the denial stage. It was sort of straight into anger. I think gratefully a lot of people were in the bargaining stage of grief. Please do this, please do that. And, you know, that includes UEFA coming out saying everyone makes mistakes, it's not too late. I think Jamie Carragher went straight into the depression stage when his Monday Night Football saying how down he was. I sort of, because I can't control any of this, I went from anger in a bit of spitefulness to acceptance really quickly. And it was a case of, okay, this is happening. What benefits could we have from this? And not in terms of the European Super League. In my opinion, it would fail. It would absolutely fail. What was the good thing that could come out of the Premier League situation? And that is ultimately, we don't need all of this money. Like before the Premier League existed, the clubs were there. All we want to do is see our team play against other teams. And when I look back, like West Ham versus Leicester is one of the best games of the season. Man United versus Liverpool is 0-0. For the last couple of years, Chelsea Man United has been 0-0. They aren't the games I'm even bothered about anyway. Yeah, sometimes I like watching Man City in the league because obviously they're a joy to watch on the odd occasion. And last season, the season before, Liverpool had that sort of effect as well. I really want to watch a Liverpool game, but never all of the top six, especially not, except for maybe the beginning of the season, Spurs. Definitely not Arsenal since Wenger left, and even the last 3 or 4 years of Wenger. So for me, our football would always be intact. I've seen a lot of people slagging off Sky, and you know it's their fault and it's BT's fault. And look, everyone's got to take some blame. We've got to take some blame because we've enjoyed all that money and we've enjoyed the football that we're seeing. And so I think everyone's sort of complicit in it. But at the same time, if we look at the state of English football, before Sky announced the Premier League, it was suffering because of the Heysel disaster, where Liverpool fans, 14 of them were arrested because so many people died. And obviously we had Hillsborough, which was an absolute travesty. And thankfully, obviously, Liverpool fans were proven not to be guilty. A massive, massive injustice for so many years. But the stadiums were falling apart. There was hooliganism. And most importantly, financially, English clubs were not allowed to play in Europe for, I think it was 5 or 6 years, which crippled them. The Premier League and Sky had to do something. We would not see anything. We would not be competitive in Europe in the slightest if it wasn't for, quote unquote, the Premier League branching off for Sky Sports. So if you're going to criticize something, at least sort of be aware of the ins and outs and where would we be without it. And the Premier League breaking off from the Football League is not the same thing because there is still competition involved. It is still moderately fair. And ultimately, when we look at the Premier League, the reason why there were 6 teams invited into the Super League compared to the 3 Spanish, the 3 Italians, the 2 Germans, the 1 French, is because we have the best distribution of wealth out. And it might not be enough, it might not be optimum, but we have the best distribution of wealth across all these European leagues, and the Premier League is responsible for that. So I kind of wish people would also get off the high horse with that one a little bit. Like, you're not clever for saying it.
Yeah, I feel like people are just trying to try and make like a view that nobody else kind of thought of, and just kind of like the hot takes that like kind of get put down as quotes on Instagram and stuff like that, just so people click on their profiles and stuff
One
like
retweets. It's classic virtue signaling. Like, oh, look at me with this opinion. Like if you want to go, I think some great opinions have been that, you know, why has there not been this much uproar for racism? And that is absolutely a fantastic point. Totally agree. But trying to figure out the economics of European and British football with 150 characters or less is unnuanced and a bit stupid.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people, because some people have been pro this that I've listened to, because I've tried over the last few days in the lead up to this podcast to listen to as many shows that I could of people talking about it, just so I could try and get a complete picture. Because I, like all of you, was quite frustrated at all of this. But when it came to some of the people's views, one of the ones that I found that was quite interesting was that UEFA and FIFA aren't like goody two-shoe organizations either.
No, they're not at
and
all.
Like, if you think back to when the Champions League final had fans, it was only, what was it, like 25% of the tickets went to each fan base, and then the rest was for corporate sponsors and stuff like that, showing that UEFA's, they're all about money as well. And it's kind of like bad guys against bad guys in terms of the rich versus the rich. And I think one of the interviews, which I don't know, we're going to talk about Florentino Perez's interview later, because he was, as being the chairman, he was one of the most vocal.
Clowns.
Something that I thought was quite interesting was that these clubs, which I'll read out: AC Milan, Arsenal, Atletico Madrid, Chelsea, Barcelona, Inter Milano, Juventus, Liverpool, Man City, Manchester United, Real Madrid, and Tottenham, that they felt that the money that was going to UEFA as a result of them and their fans wasn't fair, and that they deserved more of it. So, and I thought that was quite interesting in the fact that they're trying to renegotiate how the money is spread out from winning the prize of Champions League and making Champions League appearances in the knockout phases. What do you guys think about the fact that, like, that kind of spin on it, that these owners are just using this as negotiation tactics because these are extremely good businessmen at making money, and they felt that they could make more money as a result of this, and that they were kind of trying to take down UEFA and the amount of money that they make? What do you guys take on that?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head with it, really. Like, it was all about, like, it was all more their personal greed for them. Like, they can say all they want about, like, you know, like, we'll go on about the Perez thing where saying it's for the good of football. We're saving football by doing this. You're not. You're just suiting yourselves with it and thinking, oh, well, if we do this, then we don't have to give them a cut. So we get more of it and we make more profits, which makes us look great. I mean, when you looked at some of the figures that were getting passed about, like, just for signing up to the Super League, they were getting at least 300 million. And then it was like 3 billion somewhere. There was like something of an injection of like 3 billion from this bank or something, which is even worse if the fact, like, you know, there's a global pandemic and all that going on, and they're chucking money about like this, like it's nothing when there's serious financial hardships elsewhere. And I think it is just the fact of, like, we'll suit ourselves, stuff the rest is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I tweeted today. I'll read the tweet out. Aaron, I know that we agreed not to swear on the podcast, but I did swear in the tweet, so I'm going to swear. Just a warning for non-swearers. Seeing a lot of FIFA/UEFA versus Super League virtue signalling. The former are corrupt, incapable organisations, but denying their help against another tyrant out of a misguided morals is like the Allies telling Stalin to fuck off when he turned on Hitler. And that is kind of what it's like. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And it's not a case of all is forgiven with UEFA, all is forgiven with FIFA. If anything, I feel like the fans should now continue this and press on with UEFA and with FIFA. The human rights issues coming out of FIFA is beyond a joke. The detriment Brazil's had to its economy thanks to that World Cup. And we knew it was happening. Brazilians were coming out in their droves, making videos saying, please do not allow this to happen. South Africa had a massive issue. We see this quite a lot. Qatar have had multiple deaths building all the stadiums and horrible human rights issues regardless. So we know that they are horrible. Stop giving yourself a pat on the back for pointing out, oh, but these are horrible as well. It's fine. We have an immediate threat. If UEFA and FIFA can get on one side, block the Super League on that side, and then all of the fans, the players, the managers, the pundits can come together on the other side and surround them and stop it from all going to shit, then we should do that. Not complain about the morals of UEFA and FIFA right now. Once this is done, once this is in the bag and it is cancelled, we can then focus our combined attention on UEFA and FIFA, because they are absolutely disgusting organisations, the pair of them.
I think, obviously, the money surrounding this Super League, I think, is around 4.6 billion each for each club. And if you look, it's crazy amount of money, especially in a pandemic where people are struggling to put food on the table in some households. And then they're going around going, oh, there's 4 billion, there's 4 billion for you. When I know football's a business, and I saw an interview, a quote from Joel Glazer the other day that said he didn't know the offside rule for the first 2 years he was involved with Manchester United, and he still doesn't know it to this day. And it's just that just proves that he has not cared about anything else, like regarding the fans, anything regarding the players, what their career is all about. He's only bothered about filling his pockets. And Florentino Perez is the same. Real Madrid have lost 400 million euros in 2 years, and he's just worried about getting money back, and so he can fill his pockets again and get the profit back into the club. And I'm sure Barcelona's the same. If Barcelona would not have signed up for this if they weren't in as bad of a financial difficulty as they are. But I think in terms of UEFA and FIFA, they are probably the two most corrupt organizations that's probably ever been. And I think if there is a way to kind of merge, I'm not saying like the Super League is a good idea, but if there's a way to merge FIFA, UEFA, and the Super League all in one, then I think people would be more, what's the word? It would be more appealing to them.
Why?
You know
I
what I
don't
mean?
get that, Cameron. You
Yeah.
want to put three groups of horrendous people together to why would if anything, that is like literally, to stay on my Hitler Stalin reference earlier. That is literally like going Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, put them three together. Oh, we all love them now. No, it's even worse. It's World War II.
I'm on about, so if they could merge together and come to an agreement of like, or the Super League can still go ahead, but make it, so you got the World Cup 1 year, you miss a year, then you got the Euros, then so on and so on.
Yeah.
So in that in-between year, if they create like the Super League is like a month and a half, like 6-week tournament, is like a club.
But we have the Champions League, so what? You'd get rid of the Champions League, Cameron. But also, when are these players having a rest? The humans?
Well, they agree to play for the country, and they can have a rest.
Well,
But how if
Dan, most teams only give the players three to 4 weeks off, and then they're back in.
Yeah, but that 3 to 4
So
weeks
they would still get that.
Kind of don't get off and have slow starts of the season when, obviously, when there's a World Cup or a Euros, especially if they go to the death. We've obviously seen this year what having no pre-seasons like. We've got to think of the mental. I know that, look, they get paid loads of money, spot on. Still doesn't protect them mental health wise in their bodies and this sort of thing. And we've got the UEFA Nations League now for one of these years. So they're never going to have a summer off. But also, why would I want to watch that? I've just sat and watched the Champions League. We've just had the Champions League final. And then what? Let's presume it's this year that you're talking about. What, you're going to have the Super League?
Yeah, so the Super League. It's not the European Super League. It's the Super League.
But is that not like the Club World Cup?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
That's
what I'm saying. Scrap the Club World Cup because that causes problems because of the final is in the first week of most seasons. If you move the Club World Cup, call it the Super League, and have the top 2 teams from the top league of the top 10 nations in the FIFA World Rankings play in a tournament.
But Cameron, you're missing the point that one of the points that we don't want these teams to be in this league is because they're going to get loads of money for it. And if they get loads of money, then that is a greater redistribution of wealth in each league. Bear in mind, right? Let's just look at the facts here. What I mentioned earlier, the Premier League has the most even distribution of wealth across the major leagues. And we have 6 teams going, and we have, in terms of top to bottom, the most competitive league. I'm not saying it's the best league. It's just the most competitive. Now, when you look at La Liga, 3 teams have won it in the last 20 years or something. I think the last team was 2001, 2002. It was either Valencia or Deportivo. It was ages ago.
I think it was Valencia.
Bayern Munich have won how many German
9
leagues? How many have Juventus won in a row? How many have PSG won in a row? I appreciate they're not top at the minute. But the point is that like everywhere else that has a misdistribution sees one team at the top or 2 teams at the top, and that's it. We have a top 6, and 2 of them are struggling. That is how competitive the league is. So if you have this Super League, whether it's once every 4 years or not, those clubs are going to earn so much money that it just increases their power and it makes everything else less fair. And also, if it's a closed competition, the World Cup and the Euros are both open competitions. Now, I appreciate San Marino is a microstate. It's not a massive country. I think the population of Newcastle is larger. That's no one's fault. They have that pool of people to play from. However, if they got a miraculous coach and did some miraculous training, they would have the opportunity to play in the Euros or the World Cup if they could win some games. I appreciate it's really hard for them. But even if we look at, who Aaron supports, Ireland, great nation of sport in terms of, they've got Gaelic, they've got what's the other one with the sticks? Hurling, that's the one. Nut jobs, by the way.
Looks fun.
But obviously, playing football, rugby, even in the Cricket World Cup, there's a lot of history there, and they do make it to the odd championships, and that is a point of merit. And if they aren't good enough, they don't go. And even England didn't make it through to the 2008 Euros. The Dutch didn't make it through to one of the World Cups or Euros, I don't think. It doesn't matter how good you are. There is a rite of passage. You have to earn everything. So fundamentally,
saying, though,
if it's a closed shop, you are not allowing free movement. You have to have competition, but also the teams that are in there are just going to get richer. Ultimately, what they are trying to do, and you said it earlier, Cameron, is they are trying to bail themselves out of bad deals. Eden Hazard for 100-odd million, Luka Jovic for 80 million. They are trying to buy themselves out of trouble because the Spanish government won't do it for them anymore. So why would we go, okay, do it? When you look at Leeds had to spend 16 years out of the Premier League, going down to League One or whatever it was, just so that they had to earn it. And it was because they'd spent too much money. You look at Rangers, they had loads of problems. They had to go down to the bottom and work themselves back up. if it is the way, if it is the natural order, so be it. Real Madrid and Barcelona have to go down to the bottom. That like Newcastle would, like every other team should, and they are trying to snake their way out of it. And I'm just not accepting anything that would save them that isn't earned.
Building on your point though, Dan, right? Like, you know, I was saying like San Marino could have that virtue, have that chance. You look at the Champions League and the Europa League qualifiers, you've got them teams like the Irish teams, like the Northern Irish teams as well. Like, them qualifiers are like some of the biggest games for their season, like, because they've had the right to at least attempt to qualify for the Europa League or the Champions League. And sometimes they do make it through.
I believe they're even making a third European competition.
Euro Cup 2 or something.
It's called the Conference League.
What I'm seeing is that you're saying it's a close competition. It's not really, because
it is, because there's no relegation.
No, the 5 teams.
No. Let me finish. The top 2 teams from each league, say the top 10 leagues in the world football based on rankings, the top 2 each year go in, right? So then you've had extra competition in the league, and then the team who wins it, whatever country they're from, I know you probably won't like this, and I know they probably won't do it, but a percentage of their winnings has to be put into the lower leagues, where, you know, you've seen teams like Barnet and Dover who's completely forfeited the seasons and are now sat in 0 points. I know they can't get relegated, but they're just sat there doing nothing, facing mass fines.
But Cameron, why would they do that? The entire Perez came out and went, "We are sick of paying for everyone else. We want this money for ourselves."
I'm just thinking of another idea that could make it work.
Yeah, but they're not going to. They're never going to agree to something like that.
But we only need to come up with ideas that would appeal to them, because no one wants anything else. So if you are going to think of an idea, then you have to appeal to the motivations of the people behind this, and their motivations are greed. So the suggestion that money should be shared doesn't appeal to their needs. So it doesn't solve the problem. It just creates something else, which it's just all so annoying.
So on to basically following on from the statement that they gave, I just wanted to do quick fire, because I know we have a lot to say. There's just so much to digest. So just a quick fire part, highlighting part of the statement that people didn't like. Obviously, the 12 teams, people felt some of the teams don't deserve to be there. I mean, me following AC Milan, we've been nowhere near the Champions League, never mind having to be one of these founding members. Their own point of view, because they're so desperate for European football, if that was offered to them, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, we're definitely going to do this," I can see why they did it. Same with Arsenal. But the biggest problems seem to be with Manchester United and Liverpool. Obviously, that's what happens when you have Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher on one of the most watched shows in England. But in terms of the teams that were involved, just really quick, did anyone else see a problem in the fact that some of these teams are just struggling right now and just don't deserve to be there?
Tottenham.
Yeah, Tottenham haven't won a trophy since 2008.
The most pointless team to put in there, just, whack Tottenham in because there's no one else. It's literally what it looked like, just, stick them in.
Yeah, and Dan covered it before. Sorry.
It's just a lot of people are confused why they're in. It's very simple. They are the richest teams. They have the most money. Also, it's like 4 or 5 American mates who all own American franchises across various sports. So they've all just obviously had a few drinks and went, "Oh yeah, should we do this?" But it's a case of money, nothing more. If it was based on merit, obviously teams like Ajax would be in there, as they have 4 European Cups, I think it is. So I just, it's very simple. It is purely money based. And because of that, Tottenham and Arsenal do deserve to be in it, because they have more money than everyone else. because this isn't anything to do with football. This is anything to do with sport. This is only to do with money. So don't get confused. So they absolutely do deserve to be in there because they are rich. But what they did, obviously, what I'm saying they deserve to be in is arguably the most hated idea in footballing history. So congratulations for deserving that, Arsenal and Tottenham.
I totally agree. Moving on to in the statement, it said that a further 3 clubs would join in. However, we found out, and the clubs came out and said, 5 of them in total, that they didn't want any part of it. Bayern Munich, just a round of applause. Dortmund, round of applause. Paris Saint-Germain, which was the biggest surprise. I don't think...
Right.
Sorry.
The PSG one, though, okay? Who does their owner work for? Sorry, work with? UEFA. Of course, he's not going to turn his back on his mates at UEFA.
Well, look at Ed Woodward. Ed Woodward worked with UEFA. He still went in. I mean, he's now left.
He was in the ECA. It was different. He
also had roles at UEFA.
Did he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he worked for the UEFA. The issue, I think, why PSG didn't do anything is because of their relationship with FIFA for the Qatar World Cup. So they didn't want to jeopardize their relationship with FIFA when they had to pay FIFA millions in bribes to get the World Cup.
I was going to say, I think there was more to it.
Allegedly, don't want to get sued. Allegedly.
You've also got to look at why would PSG want to leave the league that their owners own?
Mm-hmm. That's what I mean, basically. Like, you know, why they're going to want to leave something that they've got their money already in and go somewhere else to just be around basically the same thing that they would own.
But anyways, they didn't join. So they're one of the teams. I saw a lot of people say that out of the remaining Champions League teams, everybody is now a PSG fan because they want them to win now.
So the only one left.
And then we found out later that Porto and also Ajax turned down the opportunity to be a part of the founding members. So well done to them teams. Moving on, the fact that there is no relegation for these 15 and that it is only 5 can be invited depending on how well they do outside of the Super League, which is just kind of a slap in the face. I feel like that's also a problem that people had. A lot of people said that it was Americanized, which I totally agree with. In the fact that the NBA and NFL don't have relegation. However, they still have stuff to play for at the bottom of the table in terms of the draft. There's no sign of a draft happening in football. So it still is not totally Americanized because it just doesn't work. And then the fact that of all the money that is going to be into the clubs, and they said that it's for the greater football pyramid, and it just sounds like a big pyramid scheme if you ask me. So moving on to Perez's interview, because this leads us straight on. He was basically trying to explain how it's going to help football, how it's going to help the footballing pyramid. Dan, I know you're really excited for this part. Just first of all, like, what were did people actually see the full interview, or probably spoke in Spanish, but did anyone read through the whole thing, and what were people's immediate thoughts following from his words? And then we'll go into breakdown.
I just thought the man was an absolute clown. Like, some of the things he was coming out with, you just thought, do you actually believe, you just start thinking, do you actually believe what you're saying? Because none of it, no one thinks like that. The whole, I know we're going to go into it, but the whole 18 to 24 thing, that we wouldn't watch, people like that won't watch a full match, so we're going to shorten it down. I remember being that age and watching full games nearly whenever they were on TV. I think, Cameron, you're still around that age, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in that age.
Do you watch a full 90 minutes of football, or are you bored?
Depends who you're watching.
Yeah, exactly. It just depends what the game is. If it's
There's nothing
Burnley
better than
versus
Burnley.
Brighton, then
Right.
you
There's
know,
no wrong with watching Burnley Brighton 90 minutes.
then I think if it's like last game of the season, you know, Newcastle need to win to stay up. Fulham also need to win to stay up. I would probably watch both games 90 minutes all the way through. But if it's like November, then I'd watch a lot of the game. But I think he has got a point in saying that most people around that age would rather, they've got their minds elsewhere.
But it's like the response you gave this morning when I sent you that this morning. Your response was, "I'd rather watch rugby if I was going to watch a shorter game."
Exactly. But again, I wouldn't watch rugby, so. But no, I agree with him in the sense that the people around my age would rather be out, either in a pub, in a gym, or out with mates, especially if you're like 16, 18. Obviously not the pub bit, but if you're around that age, then more people do spend time on, like, video games or out with the mates. Then, but 24 is a bit old. I think by the time you get to 24, you're more grown up, and you're more, what's the word? You would be more interested in watching the full 90 minutes. Well, I think the younger you are, the shorter attention span you have, which means, yeah, you won't probably watch the full 90 minutes.
So I'm gonna say we'll fast forward to this bit, seeing like we're on it, if that's all right with you, Dan. So basically, what we're going to do with this part, I'm gonna just press you a little bit because you've made some points that I could easily see the other side of it. Like, do you not think that, like, the fact that the economy is the way that it is, it's hard for young people to get started in jobs and stuff like that? The fact that it's like £30+ for a football ticket at the high section, and even having to pay, like, you'll have your TV package, which you probably, people our age, we just want Netflix and just some of the streaming stations, but we get our box package, but you have to get the premium ones and then pay in excess an extra £20 a month to get BT Sport, to get Sky Sport on top of that. Do you not just think that it's because it's so expensive to actually watch, and young people just don't want to spend their money on that when they're not going to watch every game?
Yeah, I do. I think young people have been priced out of football in a way. Like, not just young people. I think a lot of fans have been priced out of football. Like you said there, the TV package prices, or even a match day price. You're looking at about £30. Some clubs charge more than that for one ticket, and it does price people out, because it's like, you've got your job, but obviously in current climate, you might not have that job. So you've got to kind of think, what's more important, watching the football or maybe feeding your kids?
Well, I think that's where a few years ago, I know, especially the German clubs were known for protesting the 20s plenty rule.
Yeah, they did. I remember, because they were coming over for the Champions League and holding up the banners there and everything. But yeah, I think.
Go on.
I think you're right, Aaron. Like, young people are just being priced out at that age. Like, you may be getting your first house or something. It's like, all right, I'll get a TV package. Oh, but I want the football. Oh, I can't afford it.
I'm not being funny, but where are they getting this data from?
Exactly.
First of all, is it accurate data? 16 to 24-year-olds aren't interested. But also, so let's say I'll go through my life. 16 to 18, live with my parents. So as far as any statistics are concerned, I wouldn't be on them, because my stepdad had Sky Sports. When I was 16 to 18, BT Sport didn't exist. So they would have no data on me from 16 to 18. From 18 to 21, I was at university. I barely had enough money to buy my Frosty Jacks for the week. Right? I mean, that's the levels that we're at here. If I buy a loaf of bread and just eat that, then I can get drunk tonight. So I'm not... you on chipping together to buy Sky and BT or whatever. And I think actually in my digs, we actually got Sky Sports 1 and Sky Sports News for free anyway.
Gosh.
So that was absolutely spot on, got that. But also, you'd go to the pub. Oh, the match is on. We'll go to the bar. Oh, do you fancy a drink? Oh, is there any football on? Oh, Champion will stick that on. Again, not a part of any statistics there because it's in a pub. And then I think when I'd sort of moved into my first house, the guy that I lived with, he already had Sky. I moved into like a house share, and he was in his mid-30s. So again, I'm not on that. And then finally, when I move in with one of my friends and we go together and we're in this demographic that he's talking about, we'll get Virgin, and again, BT Sport isn't a thing then, really. I don't think it's not. Actually, it's not. So we got the Sky. We got the Sky with the movies, whatever. We paid an extortionate amount of money for it, but it's like, yeah, there's 3 lads living in here, so we'll watch it all. We've got the films, whatever. So where they're getting the statistics from, but also what 16 to 24-year-olds have access to these facilities, and then which ones of these have the money to actually pay for Sky and BT. And one thing that I kind of half agree in this, that, and the other, and especially with a lot of people saying, is it used to be on ITV, and it was so accessible to people. And I remember being younger, going to my dad's when Newcastle. So my mum and dad split when I was 2. But whenever Newcastle were in the Champions League, be like, oh, do you want to come over and watch football? Because I never really used to get to see him that much. So it was a great opportunity to hang out with him and to watch it when I was young. And he didn't have to pay for all of it. And when I was younger, we said on our very first podcast, what are our Champions League memories? What's our very first final, Aaron? And I said, I stayed up late because I wasn't allowed to watch the second half of Man United versus Bayern Munich and Barcelona. And I kept on turning it on every time I heard someone come up the stairs. I'd turn it off, and I was able to do that because I just had ITV and I was dead excited for it. And ultimately, that's what thing. I'm going to be honest. I think it's mainly BT. BT took it away, but also BT got in this rivalry with Sky, which has then driven everything up crazy because that's when the broadcasting rights changed. It was there, and then the rights to redistribute it to other countries. In particular, beIN Sports. So we've got to look at everything as a whole. Like football, in my opinion, football is made great by Sky. I don't care what anyone says. Sky has allowed me to watch so many amazing games, and they never really stepped on the toes of Champions League or anything like that. That I think they shared the international duties, but never for World Cups. I think it was for the qualifiers. But when BT Sport came and then when beIN Sport came, it's just too much. And now these tools want to start charging people through a subscription service. And it's like, well, if you look at countries like South Africa, for example, or India, they pay for all of their sports, everything in one channel, essentially. It's one package. And they pay peanuts because obviously the economy of those countries is worse. So they can't afford as much. They can't afford to pay £30 a month, so they pay £8 a month, but they get it all. Not whereas we've got to pay 60, 65 for the pair. So they're then expecting people in poorer countries to go, oh yeah, we'll pay for the subscription service when £1's a lot of money to them, or £2 a lot of money to them, or however much we're going to charge. I imagine it would be you get to see every game for £10 a month or something like that, is what I presume it would be. But that's actually more than the full service that they're getting in these countries for cricket and rugby and all of the football and stuff like that. So I'm not entirely sure how his model would have fixed the issue, but I do agree that some of the mystique and the fantasy is getting taken out of it when it gets pushed on to less accessible platforms.
Yeah, and just going on from that, a lot of these owners are American. And so I lived in America for over 2 years. And when I would talk to a lot of people about soccer, they would basically say that it's just not as high scoring. So as a result, it's not as fun. Whereas NFL, NBA, the very high scoring games, there's points scored every couple of minutes. It's quite quick in terms of like the amount of stoppages for ad breaks can get annoying. But that was one of the criticisms.
I say NFL is not quick. 3 hours for a 1 hour game.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I just meant like the action is quick because of the amount of stoppages that they have.
Yes.
But like in terms of the Champions League in America, it's in the middle of the day. Like the Premier League is such a bigger product in America because it's on the weekend and people have the time off. Like I've talked to so many people where they wake up early. They're excited to wake up at like 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning because their team's on the TV. And the Champions League, though, because of the time difference, they're at work and they don't have the chance to watch it. And so that if that's where the American owners are getting their information from, that, oh yeah, the Champions League isn't as popular, well, you need to look at time difference. Like, remember that there's more places around the world. And then also,
yeah.
And then just last point on this.
It's timed for a European audience, funnily enough.
Exactly. And then people around that time as well, like, 18 to 24-year-old in America, they're like full football scholarships, like football as in soccer. They're not as great and they're not as good as full basketball or full track and field or full American football scholarships that will pay for their education at these expensive universities. So they're not going to put their time and attention into a sport that isn't going to pay for their college. Like only certain colleges do it around the US. And so people can correct me if I'm wrong, but definitely American football scholarships and basketball scholarships, like March Madness and stuff like that, it puts students on like a pedestal as if they're already a professional athlete. They want that, so they're gonna pay attention to them sports. That's just a part of the demographic that they're looking at in terms of America. But there's more to digest from this interview. One of the things is that it's going to help the new generation of fans, which we've just covered. But the pandemic, which Nathan's already covered a little bit, the fact that they're using this pandemic to basically like kind of give them permission to do this Super League. I know they've lost billions because they are the biggest clubs and they have the biggest stadiums. They need to have full capacity and they have the biggest salaries. However, wasn't it Liverpool and Tottenham tried to furlough their staff when it first happened?
Arsenal made 60 redundancies like 2 weeks, like a month ago or something.
But you're right, Aaron. Liverpool and Tottenham did furlough their staff.
And this was at the same time where the owners were negotiating a 3.5 billion package when they joined the Super League, which is insane.
It says it all, really, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it says the kind of people that you're working with. Dan, did you have anything on that you got from his words?
In what bit?
About either appealing to the new generation of fans or just using the pandemic and the timing of the European Super League.
Yeah, obviously the pandemic is obviously good for them because they can blame everything, their money issues, on the pandemic, which is nonsense. We've already established they've got so many bad investments. I think Lionel Messi's wages amount to $500 million.
Mm-hmm.
There you go, Barcelona. There's your problem. Like, if you can't afford a player, don't have them. I think player wages are a huge factor here. De Bruyne's just went on 300 grand a week. Messi's on $500 million. $500 million. I don't know how long the period is that it's over, but it's an insane amount of money. Clubs are under pressure to be able to meet these player demands, and it's unfair. There needs to be some kind of salary cap. I appreciate that salary caps, I think, are illegal, but there needs to be some way of doing it. I know in MLS, they're allowed 3 players to earn over X amount of money and everyone else must be under X amount of money. Mm-hmm. Whether they do that, there needs to, and it's not a case of putting a cap on total earnings, because obviously someone like Ronaldo, for example, makes most of his money from sponsorships, etc. So it's not a case of saying, oh, you can't be a multi-billionaire. It's a case of saying, from your club, you cannot exploit it. You cannot exploit your status. Pogba wants 500 grand a week, and he'll probably come out at some point and go, "This is disgusting. It's greedy." And you're just like, "What you doing?" He's all coming out saying it's greedy, but ultimately, a lot of the pressure is coming from players needing so much extra wealth. Like, you don't need all this money. You do not need to go from 250 grand a week to 500 grand a week. I'm sorry, you just do not need to do that. So I think some of the players are just as bad, to be honest. And I think they're sort of forcing the hand of some of these owners. Not to excuse the owners, I think they're all absolutely disgraceful. And obviously not all players, some players are great. But also the pandemic helps us. There's no fans in the stadium. Amazing what we've seen tonight. Chelsea fans getting in and around the bus, stopping it from coming through. The fans' voice has been... We've seen how powerful the fans' voice is without even being allowed in the stadium. Can you imagine if we were?
Imagine last night.
So one of the things that he was talking about trying to kind of bring people to his side was that financial transparency, kind of what Dan was alluding to as part of his his thoughts on the interview. Basically, Perez said that he wanted the Super League to be taking place next season, soon as possible. And then he was like, "Oh yeah, I know LeBron James's salary because it's public, but I don't know the UEFA president's salary. Why? UEFA does not have a good image throughout its history. There needs to be transparency. I reduced my salary because of the pandemic. I don't think the president of UEFA or La Liga did that. We have problems even with our sponsors." And then he goes on to say, "We will do all of our efforts to try and reach a compromise with FIFA or UEFA. If we can't reach an agreement, we won't back down. We'll continue working even if it makes more time." And somewhere in there, he said that it's going to benefit the whole football pyramid. Did anyone have any ideas on how that was going to work? Because I could not get my head around that, how it was going to
Could it not
benefit
be just
everyone.
like what I was going to say, where if they join the Super League, then they have to forfeit a certain percentage of their earnings to the rest of the pyramid in their country?
That won't happen. But
that won't happen. They wouldn't if they're making a league like this so that they can get more money for themselves. They're then not going to cut it and go, "All right, chuck that at that league.
The other thing
We'll
is,
chuck that at that league."
The other thing is, I know financial fair play is not in next season, well, or for the foreseeable future.
I think it's been relaxed or something. I don't know what's exactly happened with it.
Obviously, with the teams not being part of FIFA or UEFA, but if say they were still in the Premier League and they're winning this, would they be able to spend that 4.6 billion?
No.
In the Premier League? So
no, it was already said. The money that they would get for this European Super League or whatever it was called, it was not to be used on transfers apparently. So I don't know what they were using it on.
It was to help them overcome the loss of the pandemic.
That's it.
So yeah, basically, from what we're all alluding to, we don't know how it was going to run. We're just going to. Yeah. It's just guesses.
I know how.
Sorry, go on.
No,
Dan.
they were saying what they said was they said that because they get so rich, because I think obviously it was funded by JP Morgan, which I take massive exception to. People in this country, people in other countries have lived through states of austerity. We have been scrimping and saving. We have not lived lives that we could have done because of the world banking crisis. If anyone doesn't know anything about it, there's a really good Hollywood film called The Big Short. I think it's on Netflix. Go watch that. It's very entertaining and also very easy to understand how the world banking crisis happened. But basically, to put it into a football analogy, the banks did the equivalent of what Liverpool did to Chelsea when they sold Fernando Torres for 50 million. They had a player that was amazing, knew he was injured, knew he was finished, but sold him at the price to what he was several years ago. That's what they did with the mortgages, just as a football sort of comparison there. So if you think about how Liverpool did Chelsea with that deal, that's exactly what this is. So we spend all of our time, taxes, paying back these banks, JP Morgan being one of the biggest. And now they've got so much money that can do something as obscene as this and throw it in everyone's face, which makes us sick. But the way that they were alluding to is that they get all the money and then they'd buy all the players, and then all that transfer money would make all the other teams rich, which is kind of true. But at the same time, money isn't important. Sport and competition is. So they get all the best players and all the other teams get all the money, still isn't even. It doesn't make any sense. But also, what I don't think he's thought about is, at the minute, there is a Manchester United tax, isn't there? Harry Maguire had to be sold for 80 million to Man United. If it was another team, it would be 50. There is a Premier League tax. Oh, we want to sell this player for 20 million. Leicester come in. That'll be 30, 35. There is a Premier League tax because we're so rich. Do you not think there's going to be a European Super League tax? Declan Rice goes from 50 million to 150 million.
What happens?
Oh, how much you want for wages, Declan, when we're in the Premier League? Oh, 250 grand a week would be lovely. Bit much, but okay. Super League, 500 grand a week, please.
Uh-huh.
Like, what do they think's going to happen here? There's going to be... So, all their money would be good for us because it's going to make us rich. For a few years, we are going to give them the best players. But it's not exactly a sustainable model because there's still going to be skin in 10 years, because if Luka Jovic cost Real Madrid 80 million, the same player would cost them 200 million, and he wasn't worth 80 million. But money's just not a real thing to these people. It's crazy. So yeah, I don't think it was a very well thought through plan at all.
And then
do we know what's going to happen? Like, eventually, when the Super League does happen, because it will happen at some point within our lifetime, it probably is. Do we know what happened with contracts? Because if a player's contracted the Premier League and he wants to move to the Super League, is there going to be some sort of, like, how would you put it? Is there going to be some sort of, like, barrier to break through?
Easy answer here, Cameron. I don't think any of us know.
No.
None of us know the contracts.
No.
None of us know any of that. So I think we'd just be speculating and
Right.
wasting people's time.
Yeah.
I've got no idea.
Yeah.
And then the last point from his interview, which was the threats from UEFA that he talked about and kind of played down. So he says, players excluded from international matches or tournaments, that's not going to happen. I want to assure every football player out there, they cannot stop you from playing with your national team. And then Real Madrid will not be banned from the Champions League. I guarantee it 100%. No one can take us out of the Champions League. And so basically, then goes on to say UEFA's monopoly is over. A new era is coming. Obviously, with hindsight, this is kind of fitting. We know
now.
Yeah, we know what's happened. But in terms of, I wanted to get your opinions on this, where the players were going to be punished for joining in the league. Because, say, for example, Ronaldo, well, that's not a good op because he's near the end of his contract. De Bruyne, he's just signed a new contract. He wants to leave Man City because he wants to play with Belgium. And because he's one of the best players in the world, Man City don't let him leave. Is it fair that he's punished as a result? Or like, what's your opinions on that part of it?
Well, I know FIFA, I read somewhere that FIFA said they were open for discussion about it. If we're banning players for the national team, because I think they're thinking, oh well, if we have a World Cup with no Messi, no Ronaldo, then we're going to lose a lot of viewership, especially in them games. So I think that they're sort of open for, oh well, we'll let you play, but you have to do something in return, like you have to a fee or something. They'll make some sort of money off it, I think.
Oh, fully. It's FIFA.
But
yeah, I do think it's wrong in a way. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm in two minds of it because I think at the end of the day, the players are, in essence, really employees of that club. So, like, if that club goes to the Super League and, like you said, you know, De Bruyne wanting to leave, but City wouldn't let him because they're his employer. realistically, they shouldn't be taking the punishment out on the player because the player is under a contract. So in a way, unless the player has openly said, "Oh, I want to play in this league and I don't care what's going to happen," then different story. But the player will go with his club because that's where his club will tell him to go. So I think it's a hard one, really. That question's quite a hard one to answer because you don't know if it's like right. Personally, I would say, in a way, if I was a player like that, I would think it was wrong that I'm getting punished for a decision my club have made, even though I have vocally said I'm against this.
I think if you look at how Americanized it was going to become,
Mm-hmm.
in the MLS, the clubs don't own the player's contract. The league does.
Yeah.
So if a player goes, "Oh, I don't want to be in this league anymore. I want to go and play in the Premier League." Say if De Bruyne wanted to go to West Ham or something like that to play in the Premier League, then I think West Ham would have to cooperate with the league.
Is that a bit like La Liga? Like, because like when you're going to transfer a player from La Liga, you've got to pay like the release clause or something. You don't pay it at the club, do you? You get the contract from La Liga or something, don't you?
Yeah, I think it's similar.
Dan, did you have what did you think of Perez's threats to UEFA?
I don't think he was entirely wrong. I think, especially, what we're talking about with the money thing about, how shady they are. And I understand the moral implications of punishing the innocent to stop the guilty. It's a really difficult moral choice because it's the best hand that they had. Can you imagine saying to Ronaldo, "You can't play for Portugal"? You just be like, "I'm gone." I think for me personally, I'd need to. I don't know the laws around it, but for me, what I'd be looking for is a law that says, because the player signed the contract within this body and within this commission under this assumption, and now the employers have changed their working conditions, which they would do. Would that contract be up for a null and void? Could it be completely cancelled? Would there even be, some sort of payback to the players? But is that a possibility? And if the answer was yes, sort of every single player at every single one of these clubs was given the opportunity to cancel their contract for free, which would probably get them more money because if they're signing free like as free agents with all these other clubs, they get loads of money. Then I think it's fair for UEFA, FIFA to implement these international bans, and it's something that I would like to see because, like I say, someone like Ronaldo is going to go, "No way, I'm putting Portugal over Juventus any day of the week. I'll go play for Sporting Lisbon." But they have to have an out. They cannot be trapped because that is completely unfair. But if they're offered an out, you can cancel your contract with your club, or if you decide to stay, you will not play international football. That is a fair choice. That is a fair choice.
So going on, I think the last big point of Perez's interview, we try to cover it as much as possible, but I think one of the biggest bases of the European, well, just the Super League, is that you'll see all of these big teams play each other all of the time. And in the words of Syndrome, the villain of The Incredibles, if everything's super, nothing is super. So basically, if we're getting all these quote unquote epic games all of the time, they'll end up just becoming normal. Dan, what are your thoughts on the fact that all of these teams, and that's all we want to see, is these big teams play each other all the time?
Well, can you imagine in an alternative universe where Peter Jackson, director of Lord of the Rings, he's having his meeting with the production company and he's got it written down and they're like, "So Peter, we noticed that these Hobbit guys are on top of Weathertop. but they're like really weak. They can't do anything. We're gonna need you to change that. What do you mean, mate? And he, well, like they need to be stronger. Like, can't you just put like Legolas and the dwarf fella in there, and we can have this big battle right there? Fuck it, we'll get Sauron right away. But they're the heart of the story. Like, they teach the lesson. This entire thing's like an allegory for personal struggle and friendship and all. No, we don't care about that shit. We want 16 to 24-year-olds to watch big action, special effects. We don't care. The second fight as well. What's that all about? Well, like the fighting lots of goblins, and who gives a shit about goblins? Sauron, the Balrog. We want that double tag team match. Like, can you imagine watching a film where the strongest good guy fights the strongest bad guy at the beginning, the fight again in the middle, and then the fight in the very end, and then they turn it into a trilogy? It would be would any of you want to watch that film? It would be absolute nonsense. You would not care. And like I mentioned earlier, the most exciting games this season have either been like a Liverpool versus Leeds 4-3, Leicester versus West Ham 3-2. Even Newcastle versus West Ham's 3-2 was unbelievably exciting despite the incredibly poor quality. Man United Chelsea 0-0. Liverpool Man United 0-0. I mean, who've just played? Oh, Liverpool Real Madrid 0-0. Yeah, really good game. Barcelona have just played PSG. Sorry, no, they haven't. Bayern Munich just played PSG 1-0. I appreciate the game before that was incredibly exciting, but let's be honest, we called it at the time. The weather played a big part of it. So unless they've got fake snow machines knocking around, it's absolutely insane. No one wants to watch it. The thing that makes them so good is that they are so special to watch. That I don't think Chelsea have ever played Real Madrid in the Champions League, if my mind's correct. I don't think that's ever happened. And we're getting to see this for the first time. There are stories, there's dramas, there's narratives, there's things for people to cling on to outside of it. What we saw, Aaron, with when we were doing the rundown of all the Champions League finals, there was a narrative in 2007, Milan versus Juventus as the revenge match. Like this was like WWE or something, which is ironic because that's kind of what the European Super League was. It's like SmackDown and Raw splitting up. This was possible. This narrative was possible because these two teams, the likelihood of them meeting in two finals is just so rare. But the likelihood of them meeting at all is so rare. Have they played each other since? I appreciate Milan haven't been in loads since.
I think you mean Liverpool. I think you mean Liverpool.
Juventus, sorry, Liverpool. My bad. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Liverpool.
No, it's fine. But that's a really good point. The fact that two successful teams, historic teams, and I don't think they have faced each other since because either one of the teams has not qualified for the Champions League. Most of the time, it's been AC Milan. But yeah, exactly, and there's just so much nostalgia to it, and I feel like a lot of the conversations that people have, like around like a table with their friends, like Cameron at the gym, etc. Like it brings up so much talking points. Like we've even done like bonus matches, podcasts on the greatest teams of all time in the Champions League, but all of their styles were so different. I think if you ended up having a Super League, their styles would eventually mesh and they would all play the same kind of football. And I think I heard it on Talk Sport that these teams don't mind each other. They're scared of it, like it's imposter syndrome. They're more scared of Atalanta or a Leicester coming in and taking their spot, or Newcastle.
No danger of that happening.
I meant like with the takeover, we saw
Exactly.
how all of the teams reacted when there was the rumors of the takeover.
That top six that needed to be appeased, and
so like
it
just shows that these teams don't mind each other. So these 5 that are going to be invited in by these 12 or 15, sorry, they would have been selected very carefully to make sure that these 15 don't lose their spots.
Yeah, like, it's kind of like if they're selected in, they'll appease the other 15 that are already there. It'll be like, right, you know your role here.
Yeah, exactly. And I think my point on this as well, I don't know if anyone was going to touch on this, but they already tried something similar with the Nations League. They're like, oh, I know what will make international better. We'll play all the top teams all the time. And the competition's not been around long enough for us to see the ramifications of that in a Euros tournament because it was postponed. We've not seen how that's going to play out in a World Cup because, let's face it, England were in a group last time with Spain, I believe, and I can't remember the other team that they were with, but the time where when they topped the group, if Spain and England face each other in the quarterfinals or in the semi-final of the next Euros, I personally feel like it dampens the experience because you've just seen them two massive countries play each other 4 times over the last 2 years.
I think where it's a little different with internationals is that I don't mind the Nations League because what it did was it takes away so many friendlies. And ultimately, I've seen England play friendlies against Spain loads over the years. And the UEFA Nations League isn't held with the same regard as the Euros. There's a certain feeling and a certain energy. And particularly with Euros and the World Cup, it's that buzz around everything. You are in one country, maybe 2 countries if it's split, Japan, Korea. So you have these centers, these epicenters of fans and noise and buzz and excitement, and you know that it's happening over a period of time and you're looking forward to it and you have all the memories and everything comes up and it's a big community. It doesn't really bother me as much. I totally understand your sentiment, but if we didn't have the UEFA Nations Leagues, we'd just have boring friendlies that no one would care about because they've got to fill the quota to get the money back for building Wembley, essentially. So I don't mind it as much.
That was a great point there. I was kind of just hinting at the point where we don't know if like these big teams are playing each other all of the time and the Nations League becomes like a mainstay basically every other year. Like, will it dampen the experience? Because we haven't seen a World Cup yet since the Nations League, if that makes sense. But yeah, the friendlies, it just showed how little we cared about them when I forgot they even existed. But does anyone have any last points about Perez's interview before we move on?
No, not really. I think we covered it quite well.
Yeah. Good stuff. And if anyone else has anything they want to say about all of this, get in touch with us on Twitter at UCL Fantasy Pod. So now we're going to have a little bit of hypothetical fun with this. Obviously, when the news broke, Gary Neville was one of the most retweeted about this, saying that these teams deserve to have points deducted. They deserve to be relegated. So let's go through some of our punishments, what each of us would do if the Super League, if it had have went ahead. We now know that it's not. And then we'll go through, should there be a punishment now that these teams tried to break away? So first we'll go into, if the Super League happened next year, what punishments would you have in place? Nathan, do you want to go first?
Chuck them out of the league. I think realistically, if you look at it, they're going to be more interested in playing their Super League games on the midweek than they are their Premier League games on the weekend. Them games in the Premier League, because they're going to have nothing to play for in the Premier League, because it's not like they can qualify for anything because they're in the Super League. So they're going to just play in that. They're going to play more for that. You know, for that TV money or whatever they would get from it, they're going to play their better players in there. Plus, obviously, it is a forbidden thing that they shouldn't have signed up without. They can't enter an unsanctioned competition without the Premier League say so. So realistically, they've already broken that law. So there has to be some kind of punishment, even with what's happened tonight. Like, them clubs still need punished for agreeing to do this in the first place. Even if it was, points deduction, But is that really going to do much? I mean, if it got them out of the Champions League places, it might do something to them. But I would just like, if you're going off what to do now, I would still relegate them. But then you've got to take 6 teams up from the Championship if you're going to do it. It will be a mess on.
One thing I want to add on to Nathan's thing first is that an unnamed owner of a top 6, one of the 6 out of England, said exactly what Nathan just said. They would play the under-21s in the Premier League to focus on the Super League. I wouldn't punish them since it's not happening, because they haven't left officially.
But they agreed to leave, though. Do you know what I mean?
But they haven't left. And if they did leave, then I would put them in the National League with a significant points deduction at the start of the season.
So if it had went ahead, I think the punishments would be, like I say, providing there is a lawful way for the players to get out of their contracts, international bans. For absolute shits and gigs, I would have said put all the clubs on 0 points, deduct all the points off them so that all 6 of them are on 0, and they now have a scramble for the last 7 or 8 games of the season, whatever it is, to see who gets the 3 relegation places. Sheffield United stay up, because I just think that'd be absolutely hilarious. To turn them against each other would be brilliant. If they were going to leave, and then that way, obviously, you're going to have 3 of them relegated for next year, which is the point. Either that, or do, Rangers have had it, Juventus have had it, where it's an automatic relegation, or be put at the bottom of the pyramid so that it's actually quite unsustainable for them to use the money that they're getting, like really shaft them. The fact that they're likely to stay, I think it's important not to prod the bee's nest too much, but they need punishment. It's really tough, because if, let's say you go, right, we're going to give them a points deduction, you're punishing the players, and actually the players have stopped this. That's really unfair on the players. The players are employees, like we've said earlier on, so I'm not too sure now if a points deduction is the best thing. If there's rules there, and therefore they've broken the rules, and then they get points deductions, a bit like what's happened to Wigan, it wasn't the players' fault, then that is fine, and the rules, go and do that.
There is a law, there is actually a Premier League law, forbids clubs from entering unsanctioned competitions, meaning there could be grounds for some sanctions to be imposed.
Yeah, whatever those sanctions are, there should be the heaviest of sanctions. Obviously, I'm not entirely sure what those sanctions could include. If it's points deduction, that's fine. I definitely think there needs to be a large, and I mean a large, financial thing. And also, they need to set a precedent right here that they're going to throw the book at these 6, but also whatever fines are in place, all of this stuff, the same rules need to be applied to racism within sport. You can't have, they want to break off and do this, so we're going to fine them, I don't know, make it up, $1 million. We're going to charge them £1 million each. And then, loads of racism comes out and, oh, well, that's 35 grand. It can't be that. It's got to be $1 million as well. It's got to be the same points deductions. We need to start drawing a line in the sand here about integrity of the sport, because it's all gone to hell. And this is a time for fans to continue to mobilise, to continue to be active on Twitter, to continue to speak out about UEFA and FIFA now. Now that this is done, and hopefully it is done, we now go against UEFA. All those people that were speaking about it earlier on to look clever, now's the time to be clever. We need to back up that with the things like discrimination in sport. We need to continue this. Social media has proven to be such a powerful place, more powerful than I ever thought was possible. We now have the voice, and it's in our control. And we, as a fan base, have been proven to have that power. Same with the pundits, same with the players. We need this outrage and uproar with everything that we feel is morally unjust about our game. That includes FIFA, that includes UEFA, that includes ticket prices, that includes, most of all, racism and homophobia, or any kind, maybe not necessarily just homophobia, but the transphobia that James Rodriguez received. Oh yeah, good banter, lads. Good banter, well done. This sort of stuff needs to be met with as much animosity, with as much vigor and as much urgency and agency from every single fan. And now that we have the power to do it, we've just made ourselves culpable. So we need to act. And whatever these clubs receive, that needs to go on with everything across the board.
It's like Cameron's just said basically there. The Prem said they'd sue the clubs. I actually think, Cameron, that might have been your way for that, said they would sue the clubs 50, 60 bill. But it has just like formally been announced. Man City have basically enacted the procedures to withdraw.
Come on, main event podcast, 1-0.
Ed Woodward's left, and now the rumour is that Manchester United could be going up for sale. The only clubs that haven't pulled out of this yet are Liverpool. I'm not sure on any of the Italian teams yet. Arsenal, I've seen a couple of things saying that they have, but then again, you know, it could just be Tottenham are another one. Tottenham and Liverpool and Arsenal still sat there firmly. Atletico Madrid and Barcelona have apparently pulling out. But then you've still got Real Madrid and the Italian teams that are still sat there.
I mean, Real Madrid will be the last to fold. I think
with Liverpool, because I think Liverpool were one of the main instigators for this, along with Real Madrid. Man United definitely up there, and I think they're just trying to backtrack as quick as possible.
Yeah, I think Florentino Perez, since this one's failing,
has to resign.
No, he won't resign. He's just been voted in, man. But since this one's failed, I think he might take it to Qatar or something like that, or get some MLS teams involved and some Australian teams and Chinese teams, Qatar teams, and then put them against each other, and then obviously it won't be as attractive money wise to the clubs, but it'll give people an inkling of how successful it could be.
Is there an Asian Champions League?
Yes. And CONCACAF.
And ultimately goes against the fundamentals of sport, and that's one of the main arguments. Like,
I think there's a Champions League in every continent.
So, fair enough if there wasn't one, and even if it's not the best idea, it would raise the profile of Asian sports, particular because there aren't a lot of Asian representatives within football. They're on what? I'm even trying to think of how many Asian footballers there are in the Premier League. Heung-min Son's the only one I can think of at the minute.
Yoshida's still there.
Maybe
no,
Muto left.
He's out on loan somewhere.
Certainly. I mean, India has like 1 billion people, and no one from there. I don't think we've got any Chinese with 1 billion people there. So
I think we've got an Indian. I think
is there an Indian? Is there
in the Championship? There's Danny Bath
on the Championship, so not the Premier League. So,
so anyways,
so obviously, if there's more to be,
we're going down a different route now.
There's more to be done to increase representation across misrepresented areas of the world. Then there's arguments that can be made. Well, anything that'll make it better, because it's so crippled. And one thing that Aaron said earlier about the time difference is one issue we've got with a lot of our viewers or listeners. Sorry, not really viewing much. Is a lot of them live in India, in their 9 hours ahead. Some of them 6 hours. I think it's 6 to 9 hours, because obviously the country's wide. I think I might be wrong. It's around there. So a lot of them are asleep for the Champions League. So I'm sure they'd love a competition for when they're awake. I mean, don't get us wrong. I think this was only the first step. If this was successful after a few years, I think the Super League would be the Super League that have Inter Miami involved, that have the big team from Saudi Arabia and Qatar,
the Al Hilal and all that. Them kind of teams.
They get them in, and they'll Harlem Globetrotters. We've got Liverpool versus Real Madrid in Saudi Arabia. We've got Man United versus Barcelona
in New York City.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a rolling circus, basically.
You know what the thing is with that, though?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure all 6 of the English clubs' managers have complained about playing Wednesday, Saturday lunchtime, or Thursday, Sunday lunchtime. And now they could be playing in New York on a Monday night and then be playing in
Exactly.
Qatar on Thursday night.
Exactly. But there's more money. So, but this is the thing, though. This is, like you said there, the managers have complained. It's come out, it basically, from the looks of things today, the managers had no idea how this was going ahead.
Yeah.
It's the owners that have done it. So the owners don't care what the players think. They don't care what the managers think. Because looking at what, like, say, Jordan Henderson's come out with tonight, we don't like it, we don't want it. That's basically the statement that's been made from them. Luke Shaw put out a huge thing about it. The players were fully against it. And so were, I mean, I don't really know what Klopp was going with yesterday, but he seemed like he was against it, but also against Gary Neville.
Yeah, I think you just understood Gary Neville. I understood Gary Neville perfectly well.
Yeah, same.
I think it was a bit of a
But,
faux
like,
pas from Klopp to say, you know, to be where the money is. I mean, Liverpool's one of the richest clubs in the world, but also, you know, how would he like it in the hot seat? And Gary Neville's response was absolutely perfect when he said, you know, he runs hotels and a football club in the city during a global pandemic. People are dying. We allowed NHS staff to stay at our hotel for free. Is that not hot enough for you? And it's like,
exactly.
whoa, yes.
And then Pep today has come out and basically disregarded it. He went, there's no competition. He openly said it's not a competition. There's no effort.
No, well, thank goodness that it's kind of the fans won and teams are now dropping out, and hopefully the whole thing gets discontinued. All ifs and buts, but seems like we've got another victory with Rashford obviously overturning politicians' decisions, and hopefully we can use, like what Dan was saying, we can use our power to come together, get rid of racism, get rid of all the other bad things that makes the game so beautiful, that tarnishes the game rather. Get rid of racism, get rid of all that. And as the hashtag says, hashtag give me my ball back, so that we can enjoy the football
Mister, give me
that
the
we
ball back.
that we all loved. So, but thanks for joining us all, and we'll have a preview podcast for the Champions League. But obviously, that's still
That's
all
if you
up in
wait
the
for
air.
haven't kicked them out and PSG are champions.
Yeah, so keep an eye
It's
out
all
on
being
that.
confirmed. Isn't it? It's all going ahead. I think Real Madrid are going to be the biggest villains of it all. I feel bad having players in my team, so
I know I'm gonna. It's gonna be a
might
waste.
have to
all
come
the
out.
clubs left the ECA that's still going ahead.
Exactly, that's why I was thinking. Like all out the European Clubs Association,
And it's still going ahead.
They'll let them back in. They'll
I take that money.
straight away. They'll go, all right, you made a mistake. Go on, quickly sign this. You're back in. Happy days.
But we'll have a preview podcast coming out over the weekend, just in time for us to do our transfers and get our teams ready for the semi-finals. We look forward to hearing from you all on Twitter if you have any questions at UCL Fantasy Pod. Dan, Cameron, Nathan, thanks for joining us. Until next time, bye.